Hello, and welcome to my Ecology final project presentation. My name is Kayla Gillum. The first thing we are going to be going over is law number 1, which states everything is connected to everything else. Here we will be going over Earth's tilt on its axis, food webs, and wolves on Isle Royale. The Earth's tilt on its axis is one of the main contributors of seasonal variation, climate, and weather. The tilt determines the amount of light that reaches the surface. If a greater amount of light is absorbed, the warmer the climate. The least amount, the colder the climate. The first law in ecology states that everything is connected to everything else, meaning that dramatic changes can have a collapsing domino effect. The tilt determines the climate and seasonal variation. Climate and seasonal variation determines the specific adaptations of species. A fox will typically be red or brown in a humid continental region, but be white in tundra regions. So, we can say that the tilt of the Earth on its axis is connected to the physical and behavioral attributes of organisms. Food webs, scientifically known as the consumer resource system, is a typical representation of how every single organism is connected to each other by the transportation of energy. Within a food web, there are consumers and producers. Producers make their own food from sunlight, air, or soil. Consumers are unable to make their own food, so they eat either the other consumers or producers. A food web, much like a spider web, is somehow all connected together, which brings us to the heart of Rule No. 1. A tree gets energy from the sun, a squirrel gets nuts that fall from the tree, an owl eats the squirrel, a fox eats the owl, and then a bear eats the fox. So, we can say that the bear and the tree are connected due to the sharing of the same initial energy. The absence of wolves on Isle Royale has had a detrimental effect on the environment. With no predators, the moose are exceeding their carrying capacity and are ruining the land with their heavy footprints and hungry appetite. The vegetation is dying and the banks are eroding. However, ecologists had the idea to reintroduce wolves to the island in order to bring back a keystone species in the ecosystem. Now, with the presence of wolves, the moose population is contained, vegetation is growing, and the banks are sturdy. Everything is connected to everything else. The absence of wolves not only affects the moose population, but the ecosystem of Isle Royale as a whole. The second law of ecology states that everything must go somewhere. Here, we will be talking about decomposers, the water cycle, and photosynthesis. The second law also states that there is no such thing as waste in nature. Decomposers are a perfect example of this law. Decomposers feed on animal carcasses, leaf litter, and feces. Without the presence of decomposers, there would be a great buildup of dead animals and decayed plants. Decomposers quite literally use the waste as their way of gaining energy to flourish and grow. The relationship between every organism in an ecosystem comes first full circle, proving that nothing is ever wasted. The water cycle is the continuous movement of water. Law 2 clearly states that nothing simply goes away. Although it may seem that water disappears, that is not the case. The main stages of the water cycle are evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and collection or runoff. The liquid form of water is seen in bodies of water like rivers, lakes, and oceans. From there, evaporation occurs, which changes the water from liquid to gas. Through condensation and precipitation, the water is made back into liquid and falls back down to earth. The water cycle is called a cycle for a reason. Water never just goes away. It's recycled through. Photosynthesis is the process by which plants convert light energy into chemical energy. The ecological process is a great example of Law 2 because the energy produced by photosynthesis, the oxygen, is used by other organisms which then create carbon dioxide, which is a reactant of photosynthesis. An example of this is when a tree produces oxygen, and then a deer inhales the oxygen to live, and the deer exhales carbon dioxide, which the plant uses again to repeat the process. Neither the oxygen or carbon dioxide is going to waste. The biggest takeaway from rule number 3, which states that nature knows best, is that human change in a natural system is likely to be detrimental to that system. Here we will be talking about fishing and poaching, adaptation, and daylight savings and its tentative hopes and crushing outcomes. The first example of this is fishing and poaching. In the 80s, land in Africa was being destroyed. Thinking it was due to the overpopulation of elephants, we thought it was best to hunt a large amount of elephants in a short amount of time, in order to save the vegetation and land. However, this proved to not be the problem, and nearly half of the elephant population was killed. Fishing overpopulated fish breeds is also another example where humans thought they were doing something good for the environment, but at the end of the day only made it worse. After fishing, many dolphins on the coast of India in 2009 had died due to the insufficient amount of food. Natural adaptation is a perfect example that aligns with Law 3. Nature knows best, and adaptation is a way of helping organisms adapt to their surroundings and survive. In the past, humans have tried to mutate organisms in hopes of increased survival rates, instead of letting human take its course and producing better accustomed organisms over a longer period of time. An example of this is the hedgehog, who are prone to falling out of trees. Hedgehogs have taken to the physical adaptation of having a stronger spine and back to support the collision of falling to the ground. Humans genetically mutilate species like going rats, which all live short lifespans and have terrible lives. The third example of nature knows best is daylight savings, which is the practice of advancing time by 1 hour in the spring and setting it back an hour in the fall each year. The idea and its intentions are nice, but the follow-through does not help conserve energy at all. This is an example of how man-made changes dealing with the environment is likely to be detrimental. The introduction of daylight savings being compared to the time before daylight savings actually uses more energy. People don't go to sleep any later or stop using electricity when it becomes dark. Due to the darkness approaching so much earlier in the day, during the fall and winter especially, more energy is used to make up for the hours that were once light. The fourth law says that there is no such thing as free lunch. Here we will be talking about paper versus plastic bag use, forest fires, and deforestation. The fourth law basically means that every gain is won at some cost. A simple example that can make this law easier to understand is the use of paper and plastic bags. At first, humans thought that paper bags were bad for the environment due to all the trees being killed for the paper. This led to more plastic bags being used. However, it was learned that plastic is extremely harmful for the environment and has been one of the main polluters of our oceans, killing nearly 100,000 marine animals per year. With the use of plastic bags, we are diminishing the amount of trees killed, but increasing the amount of plastic in our oceans. With the use of paper bags, we are decreasing the amount of plastic, but increasing the amount of trees cut down. Forest fires are another great example of Law 4. Naturally occurring forest fires have the ability to cleanse the land, meaning that they can be good for the environment. Fires decrease the amount of waste on the forest floor, cut back on overgrown vegetation, and even kill unwanted disease. However, as Law 4 states, every gain is won at some cost. So, there are many negative effects of forest fires as well. It might get out of control and destroy human life and development, contribute to soil erosion, and kill off endangered or a large number of plant or animal species. Like forest fires, deforestation is yet another occurrence in ecology that reflects the core of Law 4. Deforestation is the permanent removal of trees to make room for something besides a forest. Some pros of deforestation are: it creates more usable space for human growth, it produces more usable material, it allows for the opportunity to graze animals, and generates more revenue. However, deforestation increases the amount of carbon dioxide in the air due to the absence of trees, can lead to droughts, contributes to the extinction of wildlife, and is only a positive thing in the short run, not the long. Thank you so much for listening, and also thank you for the very unusual first semester. I know it must have been very difficult, but I appreciate your effort and your time. I am looking forward to next semester. Have a great winter break.